Welcome to the NYREJ podcast. I'm your host, Rick Kaplan. My guest today is David Brooke, and he's the founder, the CEO, and team leader for exp Realty and Brooke Group Real Estate. Hi, David. How are you?
What's happening, man? It's good to be on your show. I appreciate your invitation and your warm welcome. Seems like a lot of hats that I'm wearing, I guess. I don't know where you got that intro, man, but I seem to have a lot of jobs now. Speaking of a lot of hats, we do quite a bit of work in both the atmosphere. So a lot of guys who are in commercial are like annoyed with the guys who do a little bit of resi and commercial at the same time. They call us resi-mercial guys and not really big on both. Well, let me explain a little bit what we do. So I started as a real estate appraiser, and before that I was in construction. Got into real estate appraising through a huge story. You can certainly look up some other interviews that I've done before where I go more into that. But the whole essence was that I was showing up at properties and I felt like, man, I've been through a whole lot of schooling. I had to go through 2,500 hours just to get into my, get my certification. And these realtors are getting their license in like 2 weekends up in Massachusetts. And I was getting, $400, $350 for an appraisal. And these guys were making $30,000 on, and I'm like, how long did that take to sell? And it was like, oh, a weekend, and I'm like, oh, I'm doing something wrong here. Right. So I get into that and I get into real estate sales, and that was really hard. The guy was like, hey, are you alive? And I was like, yes, I'm alive. And so he let me start working for him. And I really wasn't getting a whole lot, Rick. I wasn't getting a lot at all. A lot of guidance, a lot of mentorship, nothing like that. And started really writing down the things that worked and the things that didn't. In 2017, I opened my own, not brokerage, but my own team. And so we really founded it on some principles rather than the idea of a team leader wanting to go on vacation, have some coverage and buying some online leads or whatever teams do nowadays. But for us, it was all about training, support, and leads. And so we built an entire shop. We quickly rocketed up to the #1 team at Keller Williams Realty at the time. And since we've joined exp Realty, and now we're one of the top 50 teams in the entire company. But whatever, who cares? We sell, quite a few homes. We sell 600 plus homes a year. That's great. But what really excites us is the ability to create these mentorships inside of real estate to accelerate residential real estate agents as fast as possible. So if you want to get in, make over $100,000 a year, we'll show you exactly how. We've got this huge, massive, 500 plus step onboarding program, a boot camp, which is, 12 weeks of just intense training. So it's a real educational way of looking at, how do I learn real estate? How do I learn this industry super fast so I can get selling as quickly as possible? So that's a little bit of what we do. Sounds like a lot, but we dabble in a bunch of other areas as well. But let's just start with that.
Well, so you're in Connecticut.
I am. So
yeah. Where do you cover as far as a brokerage?
Yeah. So our brokerage is cloud-based. Which allows us to serve different regions. So a lot of times guys will be like, oh, are you in my town? I'm like, dude, I sell houses in Tampa, Florida, and I've never been to Tampa, Florida. And our brokerage, because it allows us to do what we do, we can sell houses there. So I have team agents in Tampa. I have team agents in Massachusetts, around Boston area. We have team agents that serve Western Massachusetts. I have team agents in every corner of Connecticut. So we serve all throughout, from Greenwich to Mystic, and all the way up to a little bit into Northwest region, and then also a little bit into the Northeast, but not as much in the Northeast corner. So yeah, we got a lot of coverage, and then we have a really good sized team in Providence, Rhode Island, as well. So lots of coverage there in the New England area.
So when you sell a house in Greenwich, let's say, obviously there'll be a nice commission on a house in Greenwich.
It could be.
Even a 2-bedroom home. Yeah. Be a good commission on that. Yeah. So where do you have your sales team? Where do they like to focus on? Because, some of those deals like in Greenwich and Westport, Connecticut, those areas, very expensive homes, the buyers and the sellers can be very intimidating. So you have to be a very thick-skinned, salesperson, I would think. Whereas opposed to, go to central Connecticut or to Northern Connecticut, it's a little easier,
Yeah, we can be jerks too. Don't worry about it. No, but some of the nicest, here's the thing: is some of the nicest people we know, live in big homes, and some of the meanest people that we've ever met live in small places too. So you get all over. I think you use the word intimidating, and I think it can be intimidating when you haven't done something before and you haven't developed that confidence level yet. And so what we hopefully do is train our agents how to learn their own niche. So I teach agents how to grow their business in varieties of areas. And one of those is to own your niche, figure out where you have a niche. And so we have an agent of ours, her name is Ashley Pushy, and she is in Fairfield, and she really specializes in the price point that you probably were just referring to. And that's her market that she serves. And our job is to help her and grow her as quickly as possible. And it's definitely her niche is not central Connecticut, right? So she's not necessarily learning those areas. And so the cool thing about having a team is if you found it to principle rather than personality, then it's not about myself and it's not about our branding of what we think. It's not ultra luxury. It's not investments. It can be all of those things individualized to each agent that specializes in that area.
And, I talk mostly about commercial real estate. So, the transaction of a commercial real estate property, let's say a 10-story building, could take 6 months, a year to close a deal on something like that.
Yeah.
More like a year than 6 months, but it takes quite a bit of time. But it's a nice hefty commission once you do close on a deal like that, because it could be $15 million or better.
Yeah.
When you are dealing with residential, you close, well, in the past market, you closing like in 30 days might be a late closing, They close pretty quickly. So you can close on multiple deals.
They do.
Is that the case?
Well, what I've always taught for my guys is you can certainly focus on price point, which is possible, right? Like I only want to deal with, $2 million properties or more. And those are great. You get a great commission like you're saying as well. One of the things I've noticed about some markets across the country is that your luxury market, typically defined as 3 times median sale price, is, for many people, it doesn't provide as much consistency as focusing on units. And the reason that I do that is so if real estate becomes volatile environments generally can create volatile human beings because they're constantly in this mode of change. And so we try to focus on units because it provides more consistency with people so that they can budget and so that they can plan for the next year. And it really focuses on continuing activities where if you've got only 2 deals that are under contract and they're big, large deals at $2 million a pop, so you've got $4 million under contract, and one of your deals falls apart because that's the market. There's not, 20 or 40, of these $2 million properties selling every month. One of your deals falls apart. Yeah, sure, you got $2 million in closings, but 50% of your expected projected paycheck just went out the window. Whereas if you've got maybe, 5, $200,000 properties that are under contract and you lose 1 or 2, yes, you're losing a good percentage there, but you've still got, a good pipeline that's still probable there. So in that case, we understand that the $2 million sale is still more than the 500,000s, but it gives you the idea of units. And one of the cool things that I've realized about dealing with so many units is that you get more relationships. And when you have more relationships, more opportunities tend to spark. And then when you're ready for them, cool things happen, which is, I think, something we want to talk about, given the fact that you do a lot about commercial, is this recent involvement that I've had in the eVTOL industry with air mobility and some of the things that we're looking at there.
Okay, and we'll get into that in a second. I just want to, have you seen a slowdown, either people putting homes on the market or people looking to purchase homes? Has that shown any kind of slowdown?
Absolutely. And I talk about that like very openly, I think, with a lot of individuals across the country, because not every market is our market. In Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, you're really seeing sales at 40% of what they were last year. So the numbers of units is down significantly, which means it can be super challenging. Once again, back to that example, if you're only doing luxury and you're down 40%, like that's a tough hit. And so that's why people are focusing on units as much as possible in the median sale prices. So if that happens, man, it's been very, very stressful for agents. It's also been scary for sellers because they're looking, if there's not a lot of properties on the market, then they're like, well, where do I go? And so we've been extremely outbound in our activities, meaning that I'm out knocking doors with my agents, showing them leadership through emulation of knocking on those doors, showing exactly after we knock on the doors, what we do, what we say. And our conversations go something like this. Hey Rick, my name's David and I work in town and I just wanted to hand deliver some mail today and show you what's happening in your local market. And you're like, okay, cool, thanks. And I'm like, well, what you might not know is there's a lot of people who would love to live in your neighborhood. Obviously, you love it. How long have you lived here? And we have a conversation. And then what ends up happening is I look left and I look right and I say, out of curiosity, which one of your neighbors do you think might be moving? Have you ever heard anybody say that? And they're like, oh yeah, Jimmy down the street. And then I'll go down to Jimmy down the street. I'll be like, hey, your buddy Rick's, ratted you out. He said that you might be wanting to move soon. And then you have a conversation and we put deals together off market all the time.
So there's a lot more legwork and a lot more research and things of that nature that you have to start implementing because it's not just that easy. So-and-so calls up, hey, I want to put my house on the market. It's not that easy anymore.
Well, you know what? It was like, there was a good quote I heard a few years ago. And it happened from a sales manager who walked into a meeting and this guy had not been selling real estate. This is like in 2020, 2021, 2022, right? Where it was like so easy to sell a house. He was like, are you good at dodging raindrops? And the guy was like, no, I'm not good at dodging raindrops. He's like, well, it's raining sales out there and you're not soaking wet. And the idea behind it was just so easy. And it was actually an availability market. It was so, as long as you were available, you could sell real estate. And now it's a skill-based market. And as long as you are skilled, you are going to do just fine. You just have to employ that skill. And it's doing something that, I think we've been waiting for a long time. There's 1.56 million realtors nationwide. And finally, that number is on the decline. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, things always change.
They do.
So let's jump right into this new project you're talking about. And what's that all about?
Well, I'm constantly getting involved in new things, more units, more relationships. I got started a little bit into multifamily development a few years back. I'm running a project right now with the Procopio companies out of Boston. They've developed.
That's funny because I know Mike.
You know Mike?
I just saw him yesterday.
Good guy. Mike's a very good guy, and hopefully you've met Greg, his brother.
No, I only know Mike.
Well, they're all great guys. Brian as well over there. They've developed a property up in Portland, Maine, and I'm running sales point on that with them. And so we are just over 50% sold out on that project, and we're really excited about that. A bunch of condos in downtown. And so in those types of relationships, you just come across these cool opportunities. And recently one was, I had just come across basically my desk and I was asked multiple times, hey, you want to get involved in this? And I think it's really cool. The industries around us are changing. We're seeing AI take off and the world changes through that. And we're seeing the world change after COVID and whatnot. But what really hasn't changed too much is the transportation industry, other than maybe like going through, electric cars with Tesla, et cetera. And the next level of innovation in my mind is changing the way that we can get in that last kind of like that last mile transportation. And what I mean by that is when someone takes a flight and they fly from LA to LaGuardia or et cetera, they land there in LaGuardia. Well, they've got to get to other areas around New York or New Jersey or Connecticut or whatever, and they're going to start taking Ubers and taxis in order to do that. But what would it be like if we had air mobility that could take us there? What if we could go to our downtown near our schools or near our town halls, or maybe there was something near the local Starbucks, and we were able to just take a quick flight, and it went directly from a major airport to maybe another spot. So I was introduced to this company called eVERTIPORTS, and eVERTIPORTS is headed up by Jim Barnes, and Jim's been just really spearheading securing sites across the country, and at least in Connecticut as well, where we're just looking for these great sites that would be awesome to basically, we need 150 foot by 150 foot landing pad. And what we do is we install a vertiport there. We secure a lease with the owner. It's an option for a lease. And what you can do is secure the ability to have a vertiport built within that space, whether just regular on slab or on a pavilion sort of or a platform. And what you can do with that is eVERTIPORTS will take on all the cost of the construction, all the capital costs, et cetera, all the permitting, et cetera. And once they go through that process and they start having flights land in those areas and the options to do that, they split the revenue 50-50 with the owner. So it's a great opportunity for not only, ancillary income, but primary income, especially for parking lot owners and hospitals and you name it. You think of like all of the industries that could benefit, even emergency medical services, transportation supplies. I mean, it's really endless of where this could go. So I'm super excited to be a part of it.
So you're talking basically for helicopter landing pads.
Yeah, I mean, there's some cool companies doing some stuff out there. Joby and Blade and a few of these other guys who are players in the market. But they're basically ordered these fully electric vehicles that are that helicopter sort of construction, but it's all electric. And the ability is, you think of like, a Tesla that's got to land and, you charge up they can fully charge these things pretty quickly in about 30 minutes or so, charging them up, next passengers on, fly them out there. And you can think about the business model from this of all of these air mobility companies that are going to be looking for landing sites, et cetera. And so you think about the Jobys that are out there, the Blades that are currently operating, but what about the airlines? And then you notice that they're putting billions and billions and billions of investment behind this with already given orders in order to make this happen. And what's crazy is you think that it's like, the Jetsons and it's the future or whatnot, but the Biden administration has already launched with the FAA and DOT to get their rules and along with their tax laws around what's going to happen, how we're going to, manage the flight patterns. And I think it's a real gold rush. It's an opportunity for landowners to give us a call and to have a conversation and be like, hey, does my lot fit? Could this work for us? And how much can we earn it?
So as of right now, there are not any of those type of air vehicles. They're not around yet.
Well, they've built prototypes for a bunch, and you can see some of the companies that do have very similar operations to them. But what's not in place as of yet, they've got landing sites proposed. I mean, another one just came out. They're going to put one in Tampa for some of these sites, but this is all the infrastructure is currently being built right now to supply this, and the orders are out for these.
And they have to then figure out how to manage the flight patterns.
They do,
because if you have a lot of those flying around, that could be very dangerous for people up in the air and on the ground.
It's true. And I'm sure someone at one point in time, Rick, said the same thing about a car, right? They were like, hey, what's really cool about these horses is But I don't know, somehow we've managed, obviously there's danger and there's risk with everything. And I'm sure safety is.
Yeah. And, nowadays there's just as much risk in the air, less risk in the air as there is on the ground. If you're driving on our highways, especially in Boston.
Oh yeah,
it's very risky.
Well, one of the things I get really excited about is the idea if you could, if you were in New York and you wanted to get from or Manhattan, you were in one side to the other of Manhattan, it's going to take you an hour and a half, and it's probably going to cost you $150 on an Uber. In order to do that, maybe you can get it for less $100. But right now, I mean,
I can see how it can. I can see it would be an incredible benefit because with our traffic situations that go around, it's needed. Something has to happen.
Oh, it's amazing the amount of. I mean, I don't know if you saw this recently, but LA is looking at taxing people to use their highways and beyond just tolls. So it's a tax, and the hope is let's get cars off the road. So think about the opportunity here. If we can get others, just having more opportunities to use more lanes, not only on the ground, but in the sky. It creates some cool opportunity, not only for, new jobs and new industry, et cetera, to start, but also, beyond the expectation that this goes to a $1 trillion to $9 trillion, industry as of 2040 and 2050 respectively, to some estimates. I think it creates an amazing opportunity for the world to change around us. I would love to just pop in and fly to Newport, in 30 minutes or 40 minutes.
Hey, it worked for the Jetsons.
It did work for the Jetsons.
So,
So it's definitely going to work for us. And
yeah,
maybe the Simpsons have an episode about this that I haven't seen
that's right.
to prove that this isn't going to happen right away.
That's right.
Probably with
Well,
their aliens.
I mean, I like the idea. I wish you good luck with that. And
Well,
I like to hear more about it as it progresses. So, when you do have more information, what next stages of happening, let me know. I'm sure
yeah,
the listeners would want to know as well.
I think listeners, if they are, if they're into commercial real estate and they see opportunities with this is like, if you're forward thinking, if you're progressive thinking about where the world is going, then I'd love to hear from them. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, diversification. People are in this, you just said it earlier, the market slowed down in residential, sales.
Yeah.
You got to be diversified. You got to have other things going at the same time,
Yeah, it's actually why we created it's interesting that you bring that up. We created an entire revenue stream for real estate agents and brokers. If they, send us leads on these, these sites, we can provide commissions to them, by securing a lease. It's really simple, and their owners are going to absolutely love them and call them forever. And every time they see a Vertiport, the guy's going to get excited and go, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe my broker set me up with that." So it feels like the cell tower. Remember when that was happening? It was like, what sites can we secure with these cell towers? And now those guys are, they're pretty happy.
I do remember that. I was actually in the business when it first started.
Were you really?
I was, and got out of it in 2012. So from 1980, what was it, 1984, I think it might have been when it first started. And everyone would say, that's never going to work. No one's going to buy a telephone for $3,000, and look what happened.
And here we are, buddy. Here we are.
People can't live without them.
Addicted.
People. You go by someone that's homeless in the street, and they don't have a place to live. They barely have food, and they're living on the streets, but they have a cell phone. So, everyone has them.
Well, hopefully one day we'll, hopefully we can solve world hunger and everything else. And we'll also be able to fly with, through an eVERTIPORT and
That's right.
get to our next destination.
So, David, if someone wants to get a hold of you, or reach you, I should say, and, get maybe more information about this, what's it called again?
Yeah. It's the company's called eVERTIPORTS.
eVERTIPORTS?
So electric.
Okay.
But one of the best ways that you can just get in touch with me is through my email. So, my name is David Brooke. That's Brooke, but it's David at brookegrouprealestate.com. You can look me up on our website, brookegrouprealestate.com, or find me on Instagram. David N is my middle name, and Brooke. So at David N Brooke. It's a great way to reach me. I'd love to chat with some people.
Okay. And if you do watch it on the video, at the end of the video, it will have your information if someone wants to get a hold of you. Unfortunately, when you listen on the podcast stations, they don't show the video, so
they don't see how handsome you are, Rick.
Yeah, that's why I'm on those podcast stations. They don't want to see how handsome I am.
We both have faces for radio.
Yeah. So, before we go, and we have to go, we're running out of time. What's your thoughts on where we're going in real estate right now, as far as the rest of 2023 and 2024? I know it's hard to predict, but.
Well, the cool thing is that, success and failure both leave clues as to what's happening. And the success of the market and the failure of the markets, hopefully are leaving clues for us. For those who listen to your show, who are probably far more astute into commercial real estate, what's happening with leases, what's happening with, commercial loans and everything else, I'm going to leave that to them. What I see in residential real estate is the fact that I've got 82 million millennials who are ready to buy houses right now. Over 56, according to CoreLogic, over 56% of financed properties last year were all bought by millennials. I pull demographics continually, and it shows a massive pool. The largest, almost bell curve of the entire millennial generation is in that first-time home buying phase. They've been kept up for about 2 years. 3 years, and they're ready to buy. And so you've got an amazing amount of demand headed into the market. And when you've got that crazy amount of demand and super low inventory like we haven't seen in a long time, the prices are just really rocketing up. I've seen around the country, because I talk with some friends who are like, you know what, man, I'm not seeing in this pocket over here. I'm not seeing in that pocket. And there are pockets where you've got a lot of migration out of those areas for whatever reason. But most of the areas we're seeing very low demand, high prices, low days on market. But we are worried because the numbers of sales have ticked down dramatically as many sellers have pulled back. So where do I see it going, man? Well, I probably see this going into the end of this year with continued rates at least trending into the sixes. And my assumption is that we're going to trend down into the fives somewhere towards the end of the year. I think when those rates go down into the fives and people really get used to the idea that 5 is the new normal, that you're going to see even more demand flooded to the market. Here's my last part that I think is a wise thing that the administration, any administration, would be wise to implement. Stop incentivizing buyers to get into the market by even dropping rates or anything. Start incentivizing sellers. Give them a break on cap gains or something like that in order to give them a period of time, a window, in order to influx some inventory into the marketplace and allow them to be able to sell their properties for whatever reason, take advantage of it, flood that inventory back in, and allow prices to start to depress. They're trying to combat, in Connecticut, you can get $50,000 towards your down payment, free assistance directly from the state of Connecticut, free. All you got to do is make under $113,000, have 620 credit score, not owned a house in the last 3 years. So we don't need more demand. What we need to do is take that same amount of that money, that 50,000, maybe even less, start passing that out to sellers to say, hey, you don't have to pay on that tax, give them a tax break, in order to, flood some homes to the market and give those people a good reason. There's a lot of cool things that we can do, but, my thing would be focus on those sellers to bring the inventory back.
Very interesting. Thank you, David. And we're talking with David Brooks, and he is the founder, CEO, and team leader of exp Realty and Brooke Group Real Estate. I want to thank you, David. A lot of interesting stuff. And come back again when you have more information on that thing I made, Jiggy.
eVERTIPORTS. Sounds good.
eVERTIPORT. Thank you again, David.